2025. Time is flying. It's Obama's birthday, also shared by Hakeem Jeffries. It's the 216th day of the year. 216 was a number that Pythagoras identified as the phoenix cycle, the number of years between incarnations. I think Plato also had something to say about it. But it's also the sum of 3 cubed plus 4 cubed plus 5 cubed. And the 345 Park Avenue shooting where the shooter died on the 33rd floor kind of alludes to this. The 345 thing refers to a right triangle. The 47th problem of Euclid, all of this stuff occultically connected to the same story. This 33-year-old martyr, or rather suicide, at Blackstone, just kind of fits a template. And that's kind of what I'm looking at here. What's up, Hero Paranormal X322? And yeah, again, today is also, the cube, you're right. 6 times 6 times 6 is 216. So the significance of the date, August 4th and 8-4, in this context, has to do with the fact that it's consistently pointing at this Trump assassination attempt, the headshot thing. But it also correlates with this pairing between Trump and Obama. And the significance of these two characters on the world stage is Obama is 1619, Trump is 1776. They represent this duality between these conflicting visions. And these numbers and these patterns do bear out, they're consistent, internally consistent. It's not a matter of like cherry picking or retrofitting. It's essentially a predictable model as we're talking about pre-scripted events being implemented and therefore grafted onto our collective historic narrative. History is lies agreed upon. Napoleon Bonaparte supposedly said that. And if you go into Napoleon Bonaparte, there is this interesting and not new conspiracy theory about how his military campaigns were actually just an allegory for the journey of the sun. He, the sun, with his 12 generals being defeated in the north. Very interesting. But if you recall, last year, 7/13, 2024, Trump was shot at 6:11 and 33 seconds. But 6:11. 84 days later, he goes to Butler. And that's when Elon Musk was behind him, doing the touchdown jump thing. So the 8-4 or 6:11 have been connected with two specific events. The headshot thing and the Space Needle scenario. Some kind of terror attack where the Space Needle serves the role that the Twin Towers previously did. The iconic destruction, or the destruction of this iconic monument, a historic monument, by the way, which was designated such on 4/19/1999, which is very significant again, because that's the date of the Oklahoma City bombing. It's the day of Waco being incinerated. Both of these are highly significant to the far right, and specifically to Donald Trump. If you haven't seen the subtext of it, his campaign has been attached to the Timothy McVeigh thing. So I said he was shot at 6:11:33. Well, this is again a consistent pattern. These numbers relate to very specific aspects of the PSYOP story, the narrative. So Trump kicks off his 2024 campaign. He kicked off his presidential campaign in Waco. The day before, Netflix releases Waco American Apocalypse. So if you don't know the backstory to Waco and Dave Koresh and his belief in the apocalypse, and they thought he was Jesus, it all overlaps with what I'm talking about. So you got another 33-year-old incinerated, a Burning Man. So you got the Burning Man symbolism 33. Now the Burning Man ceremonies in Black Rock City, Nevada happened 33 times consecutively. They had to break it up for COVID. But the correlation between the Burning Man and Black Rock is what I'm pointing out, and 33. In fact, at the 33rd Burning Man, they did find a dead 33-year-old there in Black Rock. So you have Black Stone, where the shooting happens, and the 33-year-old, not 33-year-old, but the man dies on the 33rd floor. See these constant callbacks to the same numbers. And what I'm doing here is I'm not saying what these things mean objectively, because these are subjective symbolic systems, but I'm pointing out their usage, the context. Why is the number 33 associated with the Burning Man? What does the Burning Man have to do with the Phoenix or Christ? Like, what are the overlapping meanings to these things? And we've arrived at some very interesting answers. So to return to the other number, 6:11 p.m., 33 seconds, Timothy McVeigh was incinerated, or rather electrocuted, on 6/11 at the age of 33. And this was in 2001, 3 months before 9/11, when lead hijacker Mohammed Atta attacked Manhattan. 33-year-old lead hijacker, sort of like, and so again, there's a pattern here that we're pointing out here, and it has to, and again, it's a buildup. And so our analysis of these patterns, which are again consistent, demonstrable, mind mappable, and not the product of cherry picking or retrofitting, but in fact, evidences of a script of plays. You know where Trump was on 6/11? Again, he was at the JFK, the center, the Performance Arts Center. And the photo of him there, he had his hands out, and the light was kind of reddish, so his hands looked like they were glowing red. Like he had his hands out like stigmata, like Christ. And we all know the connections between Trump and Christ in this bigger play, especially around the time of his arrest. But he was posing in front of a bust, a massive bust of JFK's head. So JFK's head was like a halo behind Trump's head. Someone mentioned, Kevin Mooring mentions there was a burning person in Final Destination, like the city councilman. Yeah, the fact that there was a burning city councilman at the same time as the shooting was kind of notable to me because of the connection with the black stone. So the black stone, the cube. And we get into the symbolism of today even, 216, 6 times 6 times 6. It's the 216th day of the year is why we bring up the, 8-4 has the significance. But Black Rock, Black Stone, what are we really talking about? Well, this connection consistently ties to Saturn, the black cube, and this body of symbolism which attaches the symbol of the black cube to Saturn, to time-space control, to 666. In fact, at the Super Bowl before last one, the 49ers, the quarterback was Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy. And if you remember a couple of Super Bowls before that, you had The Weeknd performing. And The Weeknd performed with this grotesque head wound. And nobody knew what that meant. The Weeknd, his name, of course, is Abel. Cain and Abel. Or Abe, like Abe Lincoln. There's some connection here that was kind of made clear with the weird decision by some news agencies to say that Brock Purdy, the quarterback, looked like Lee Harvey Oswald. They even asked him about it. You look like Lee Harvey Oswald. And he was like, he seemed like he didn't know what to say. And I think that's it's rude anyway. I mean, at least he didn't look like, Ted Bundy or something. But I thought, no, wait a minute here. You got The Weeknd playing the head wound person. You've got the quarterback associated with Lee Harvey Oswald. Brock Purdy, BP, which would give you 216. The Weeknd's birthday, February 16th, 216. And at the time, we had noticed that in Westworld, they had this little Trump-like figurine on a foosball table, this foosball character that looked like Trump. And it was after Vault 33 had been hijacked in the stolen election. So these numbers are consistent. And the person behind the stolen election, her initials were BP. And so I thought, okay, this is interesting because after she does this coup, they clean up the bloody mess. The only evidence of a slaughter was a single drop of blood in the room. And it happened to be on the right temple of the little Trump figurine. And again, this is from the Fallout, which is by, Jonathan Nolan. Christopher Nolan does Oppenheimer. So Oppenheimer, Fallout. So again, connecting the nuke scenario to this head wound thing. And when I said it looked like Trump, I did a screen cap of it and I posted it. This was months before Trump was actually shot. And it was based on a very specific character who had been memed as Trump previously, and it was a deliberate Easter egg. And again, this is just one example of so many in this area of concurrent programming. So the timing of the movie Waco American Apocalypse, with Trump kicking off his campaign in Waco, that's not evidence of simulation. No, it's about propaganda. Everything here is originating from the government. And there's only one. Now, we're getting back to Obama here because his portrait at the White House had been moved at Trump's request. They moved Barack Obama's portrait, and in its place, they put the portrait of Trump with his bloody head wound, with his fist raised up, fight, fight, fight. So there's this kind of inference here that Trump was like, you missed me. And this has been the repeated theme here, that there's this antagonism between Trump and Obama, which has really existed since Trump called into question the legitimacy of Barack Obama's birth certificate, the whole birther movement, which later was then attached to the Tea Party, which then morphed into MAGA. But the significance is that the birth date, the dates are so highly significant in this cult for whatever reason. And again, today's the Phoenix date, 216, the Phoenix cycle, which ties into death, rebirth. And also, the Phoenix is a symbol like the rooster that was connected to Christ. So Christ, Phoenix, rooster, death, resurrection, all this stuff is because the rooster announcing the rising sun. But the symbol of Christ or the Phoenix and the Christ have always been correlated. But this goes further because in every of these movie instances, or most of them, maybe I have to look closer, maybe it's all of them. But in the movie instances where you have a Trump-esque character being taken out, the antagonist is always an Obama-esque character. And in several of these movies, this antagonist is played by the same actor, Giancarlo Esposito, who also is in Do the Right Thing, a Spike Lee film, who also opposes a character who has these interesting Trump connections. So there's this recurring theme, and it gets very specific. So for example, Francis Ford Coppola's last film, came out last year, has Caesar Catalina, a Trump-esque character who gets a head wound, assassination attempt, but he survives. The person who orchestrated it was the mayor, portrayed by this actor I just mentioned, Esposito. The mayor orchestrates the assassination attempt. And then we go to the more recent, well, actually it came out just a few months before that one, or no, it came out later, but the trailer came out on 7/12. So the day before Trump was shot, the trailer for Captain America comes out, and Harrison Ford, playing the president, gets shot at while he's at the podium, and he dives to the ground, just like Trump did. Because of the resemblance, Marvel actually changed the trailer. They cut that part out. The significance here is that his antagonist, the president's antagonist, and the president played by Harrison Ford, who happens to be born on 7/13, he becomes the Red Hulk. So I'm thinking Red Hulk, some MAGA connection, he's shot at. And then Hulk Hogan, in a red shirt, speaks at the RNC and describes how that event of Trump getting shot reminded him of Hulkamania. So you got this Red Hulk MAGA connection. And guess who the opposition to the Red Hulk is? Sidewinder, played by Giancarlo Esposito, same actor who's the antagonist in Francis Ford Coppola's film. And the pattern carries through even if it's a different actor. If you haven't seen A Man in Full, a Netflix film based on a Tom Wolfe novel, the main character, this real estate magnate who's going through legal troubles and family troubles, based on Trump 100%, His whole family's in it. His destruction is engineered by a Chicago mayor, clearly based on Obama. So this is, again, it's a repeated pattern. And what Jurassic Liars has pointed out for years, because he has been intuiting and reading into this, that there's some kind of connection between Trump, Obama, and this head wound scenario, that it would happen to be more or less like a birthday present. Happy birthday, Obama. So this is one of the reasons that today's been significant. And again, 84 days after Trump was shot, he goes back to Butler. New York Post calls him Braveheart. And the Fight, Fight, Fight poster is really just a remake of the Braveheart movie poster. Not insignificant or coincidental whatsoever, considering the role of Mel Gibson as a metascriptor in this bigger play and his contributions. From being a stereotypical 9/11 truther and conspiracy theorist to his Passion of the Christ, where he hired 33-year-old Jim Caviezel to be Jesus. Jim Caviezel later becoming a big voice for Q with Sound of Freedom. Sound of Freedom. Tim Ballard, played by Jim Caviezel, is given one of those little Catholic necklaces, the scapula that has the 611 on. No, it's like a little saint pendant. And it's Timothy 611. And I'm like, Timothy 611, is that Timothy McVeigh? But anyway, 611 has been, I'm just reiterating, has been consistently attached to far-right or domestic violent extremism. But that number has been attached to it like a badge, and to a couple of other things, but it's all very close-knit. Like, the connection here is the martyr of McVeigh, white nationalism, and some kind of 9/11ing of America involving a nuke. Probably not a coincidence either that Oppenheimer, again, a Nolan film, which itself, look, this is all fascinating because you get into it, Batman, and some foreshadowing in Batman of 2020. And in this foreshadowing, he insinuates that he says, count down to 5 and throw the smoke bomb. And the smoke bomb creates this mushroom cloud. And I'm like, watch. 2025 is going to be the year that they do this thing, that we get Oppenheimered. So the Oppenheimer movie comes out, and it's on IMAX film. It's 11 miles long and weighs 600 pounds, 11.6. Oppenheimer, who throughout the film is putting marbles in this jar until it weighs 33 pounds, is wearing a badge that says K6, 11.6. So this is very consistent, and it's building to some kind of a crescendo. So then, leading up to June 11th, I noticed Final Destination is coming out. I go watch it, and it's about the destruction of the Space Needle as a prophecy, and that the prophecy has yet to become true. And it's still like a cliffhanger, like it hasn't happened yet. But the whole point of the Final Destination series has been revealed in the last few months, was that there was going to be a destruction of the Space Needle, and it was stopped by somebody who had some psychic prophecy. So Death, to get revenge, hit back at her grandchildren, who shouldn't have been born, because she should have been dead. And what was the attack? It was the destruction of the plane. So the original Final Destination that came out pre-9/11 looked like 9/11. So the movie franchise bookends the start and finish of their series with a 9/11 event and a Space Needle destruction event. And the Space Needle destruction event starts out where a penny falls into the works of the elevator and brings about the whole destruction of the Space Needle. The penny has got Abe Lincoln, again, the headshot scenario, the assassination connected with the Space Needle destruction, the pairing of these two. And as it burns, it's like you're looking at the Twin Tower, like one of the Twin Towers from the inside. You got jumpers, and then the Space Needle itself tilts. The piano goes across the floor, wine bottles roll across the floor, and I'm like, wait, it's like the Titanic. So you got Titanic illusion here. You got 9/11 stuff with the Space Needle. All of these things have been significantly connected together. If you didn't know, James Cameron's Titanic 1997 had foreshadowing for 9/11 in the form of the Titanic splitting in two, sinking like the Twin Towers, complete with jumpers. And on 9/11 2001, James Cameron was at the site of the sunken Titanic, filming a documentary called Ghosts in the Abyss. in his submersible called the Deep Sea Challenger. Now, these are all significant clues here. And the significance of the Space Needle is it's the same thing as the One World Trade Tower. It represents the fall of the Tower of Babel, among other things. I mean, these are occult symbols. But it does seem to be ground zero for the next 9/11 event. So as I'm watching this movie, the opening scene has Iris, significant names too. You know, Siri is Iris backward. And I think we're getting into something here as far as this big reveal. But she gets out of the car, she's blindfolded, they take it off, she sees the Space Needle. It's opening day. They're opening the sky view. Shortly after the movie was released, which was the 16th of May, on the 23rd, the real Space Needle opens their Skyliner. Very significant because this is the first piece of architecture that we are able to access since they put the $100 million into the Space Needle in their so-called Century Project. So we're finally seeing the fruits of this thing. Funnily enough, there was a crack in the floor of the Space Needle in the news a couple of weeks ago, and they referenced the movie, which the floor cracks when the whole thing happens. Commenter says, the very real danger of propaganda is the military becomes the entertainment division. That's already happened. As former military, I guess that every single person in the military is brainwashed. They believe all the fake news. They might fall into red pill, but that doesn't subtract the reality of anything. But with no exceptions, they all believe in nukes. They all believe in the things that they're fighting against. So you have an army of believers with big budgets who do drills to maintain the existence of these various hyperstitions that control the populations. Jurassic says, when will you take calls? Okay, let's see here. I'm going to see if I can make that happen. It'll probably be after 3 p.m. my time. I'm trying to figure out a way to take calls, and I think I figured it out. I'll use my laptop Google Voice as the phone, and I'll put it on speaker. So what I'm doing here, Jurassic Liars, is I'm just kind of trying to reiterate how 6/11 and 8/4 have been positively correlated, and these themes, like Palestine, Ohio, we had that toxic airborne event, looked like a big mushroom cloud, and that was exactly 42 miles away from Butler. And the Washington Post put out this piece that 42-mile stretch is the most significant piece of land or territory in the upcoming election. But the connection, again, between the head wound and the Space Needle scenario, these things have been back and forth. That's why I said it was significant that Trump was at the JFK Center posing in front of the bust on 6/11. And Trump has been strongly correlated and connected with the Twin Towers this entire time, as we've talked about. So, like, we're seeing these various threads. So and let me just add one here, because I think this one is mind-blowing. The fact that the two actors I mentioned that were in movies playing the roles of Trump-like characters surviving assassination attempts, two movies that came out just at the same time as the real event, real quote-unquote. These two actors, Mark Ruffalo and Harrison Ford, have a couple of significances here. One, both of them were born on days presidents were shot. Mark Ruffalo, born November 22nd, and he plays the Trump-esque character in Mickey 17. Harrison Ford was born on July 13th, the day Trump was shot. Both of them play Hulks, Green Hulk and Red Hulk. So these two Hulks playing president, get shot at, survive assassination attempts just like Trump. And these aren't weak links. Mark Ruffalo's character literally stands up and poses for the cameras with blood on his cheek. Like, how does that happen? This isn't life following art. This is art prophesying life. And this is why it blows people's minds and they start to think they're video game characters. They can't figure this out. But we figured it out. Pete Trooper says, drove a student to Dartmouth for an Uber ride. Brief conversation about the secret fraternities, namely the Sphinx and the Dragon. I'm going to see the Sphinx building. Sounds interesting. You should just knock on the door and see if they'll let you in. I went to a Scottish Rite temple in El Paso when I was in the Army. I used to walk around the city at night. And I see this temple with these two sphinxes in front. And it just kind of intrigued me. So the next day, I just went over there and I knocked on the door. I just went in. And I asked to be shown around, and they were happy to show me around. They're really proud of the architecture. They'll give you a tour. They took me into the temple, the initiation room. It was like upstairs. They have a basement, the library. They're very open about it. And they're happy to share. So I would say, because so many people will speculate from the outside, which is very, it's like, it sets this dynamic. The premise is it's secret, you can't know. And it's like, well, I don't know, maybe you should go ask. I'm not saying join, but I like to be the most informed non-believer. If I don't believe something, I have reasons. There are people who say pandas aren't real because they saw it on TikTok. Sorry, that kind of non-belief, low info, non-researched, low belief is not what skepticism is. Nor is skepticism just saying, well, that might be fake or that looks fake. Like there was this stabbing that happened in Dublin. And I was on Twitter and there were some people saying, oh, it's just obviously fake. It looks fake. I'm like, what do you mean? Show me how it's obviously fake. Show me in the video where you can tell. Fake expertise, if you ask me, to claim that you can armchair quarterback a scene like that and just describe how it's fake. If you have that ability, then put it online, make a video. I saw the same thing with the Trump shooting. People said, oh, it looks so fake. Does it? Like if you had to present this as evidence in court, how are you going to explain to the judge this is fake without just saying my feelings, my incredulity? So the appeal to incredulity is a fallacy in logic that doesn't get you anywhere. And rather than being incredulous, one should be curious, which is what skepticism is ultimately about. Skepticism is not ignoring their evidence. It's about examining it impartially. Who said that thing about rejecting something without investigation is the height of ignorance? So my point is, was the stabbing real? I'm like, well, you don't have enough information from the news report to say it's real. You don't have enough information from the news report to say it's fake. Generally speaking, it's about the supplementary material, the other views, the context. Was this predicted on the TV last night? Is there a broader set of similar ops? Are they trying to stir up resentment against the demographic? So you have to look at the bigger picture to arrive at something to say, I don't believe it for these reasons, which is, again, informed disbelief, which is a far cry from saying, yeah, it's fake because it looks fake. No, that's just belligerent ignorance. And I want to make sure that we make a distinction that, we're not incredulous, low info disbelievers, which is what most of alternative media truthers are. And I'm always butting heads with these people. I saw this truther yesterday posting some meme about how Raggedy Ann and Andy were dolls made by a guy whose kids were killed by the vax. And immediately I thought, that's probably not true. So I did research and I just looked, and it turns out that these dolls were patented before that story started. And if you look at the dates, there are reasons to suggest that no, that's actually made up, but that anti-vaxxers have kind of made up their own little historical narrative about these dolls, and they're spreading it via memes. So I provided the correct information to the person sharing a meme, and they disregarded it. And I said, don't worry, you're a truther. Don't let facts get in the way of your narrative, and your ego is not going to let you admit that you're wrong. So you're going to continue to spread this lie. No big deal. I don't care. And I didn't care to debate it because I realized that, no, we're not dealing with honesty. See, a lot of people don't even know they're liars. They think they're clever, but when you're using logical fallacies, you're not really telling the truth, but you may not be engaging in overtly lying. But there's a ton of self-gaslighting, gaslighting of others, and lying throughout Trutherville. It's endemic. You show me a truther passing out red pills, and I'll show you a clueless or a confused liar. Or a big ego that can't admit that they know or admit that they're lying or that they're spreading falsehoods. And what I don't do here is I'm not spreading alternative beliefs. And I'm not engaged in trying to tell people what to think. And I'm not which is what gaslighting is a lot of the times. Like, no, don't believe the facts you research, believe my meme. And I've noticed most of the big gaslighters are anonymous. What's up, Quay? Says, I saw that temple in El Paso. It's huge. Yeah, that's right there in the downtown area. I used to work there. My first morgue job was at El Paso Mortuary. I was just a transporter. And then that Camino Real Hotel, I did carpet cleaning there. I used to be I guess I still am. I used to be very busy all the time. It wasn't enough to work one job and go to school and do National Guard. And I was always just fully occupying myself. I wonder if I'd be much more productive if I didn't have a phone, like a smartphone. Did I get pulled out of the meatverse, dragged into the metaverse, where now I just live in a sea of dis and misinformation instead of out there doing stuff? Okay, let's see here. Brick says, have you seen the Trump attempt foreshadowed in the cartoon Ugly Americans? Yeah, where the ear gets shot. Yep, the ear gets shot off. And the guy getting shot looks like Obama. I've seen that one. That one's there's so many examples of foreshadowing, and the incredulous, I won't even call them skeptics anymore. If you think that predictive programming doesn't exist, you're not a skeptic. You're just being ignorant. And the way that they conceal it is they say, oh, you're just cherry picking from a large group of data. Because if you have a large enough pool of data, I mean, this is why Nostradamus prophecies work. This is why people can use the Bible and make prophecies. Because you have enough information to draw from, you can fit it into anything. But there's a significant difference between that and what we're describing, which is within a closed media ecosystem, and which is part of a larger pattern that's consistent for many incidents. These are not anomalous occurrences. They are writing our history in advance, using all the tools that great writers use, that they use in literature. You know, foreshadowing is a big part of it. But if you have any doubts about what I'm saying, forget the foreshadowing and predictive part. Try to explain away the real-time concurrent alignments between mainstream, heavily pushed media releases and what's happening in the news that day. I went to go see Sinners on this premise, and I stated in advance, I'm going to go watch Sinners because it's likely going to be foreshadowing some kind of race war psyop content coming up. And I said this based on the trailer. And sure enough, as the movie comes out, you have the Austin Metcalf getting stabbed at the track meet by Anthony Carmelo, and then the follow-up proxy race war on GoFundMe, as each side was funding the person that they thought was the true victim, the person who got stabbed or the stabber. And it brought a lot of stuff into light. Then you had the Shiloh Hendricks thing. Then you had the Rodney Hinton Jr. killing a cop in retaliation. No, Rodney Hinton Jr. getting killed by the police, and his father killing a cop who happened to be born on 6/11, who served 33 years. So again, these are repeated patterns. It's unreal. I mean, it is unreal. It's quite literally a script superimposed over the real thing. But my point is, in the movie Sinners, you had Michael B. Johnson playing his own twin. You have a twin dying, bleeding in the arms of the other twin, just like what happened with Austin Metcalf, bleeding to death in his brother's arms. And when I say predictive or concurrent programming, these are not insignificant releases. Even though some people say, oh, I didn't see it, didn't affect me. Doesn't matter. You know, Sinners is one of the top performing horror movies of all time. We're talking about the zeitgeist being painted up and who writes it. There is total creative control. There is a worldview monopoly that is being exerted through this ubiquitous monolith. You know, it might look like lots of governments, it might look like lots of media organizations, but ultimately it's monolithic. It is the new monotheism. They replaced the old God and the old religions with God constructs and media. Yeah, we're back on Discord. Soul 101 says, when did predictive programming get its beginning, the 70s or later? That's a very good question. So the earliest example I could find that has tons of specificity is Donald Trump, 1958, shows up in Trackdown, the episode called End of the World, a Western TV show. It aired on May 9th, 1958. And so you have a Trump character, moves into a town, he's a charlatan. He says he's going to build a wall to protect the people from this cosmic threat. So Trump comes in 2016, 58 years later, he's like, build the wall, because aliens. Illegal aliens. But then he also does Space Force, which is, again, the cosmic threat. So even CNN said, wow, 58 years later, this TV show is coming to life. So even they noticed that this was something like uncanny or something. But that's not even all. Because in that TV show, Trump's character is arrested. That didn't happen until 7 years later, after everyone noticed that this foreshadowed something. So a TV show foreshadowing the future is still foreshadowing the future. It hadn't even been complete yet. The show Quantum Leap and time travel is another big theme with Trump, like Back to the Future, Biff Tannen, based on Trump. So in Quantum Leap, there's an episode called It's a Wonderful Life that aired on May 10th. Or rather, the guy teleports in time to May 10th, 1958. So the day after Trackdown. And in this episode, he teleports into the body of a cab driver. In the back seat is Fred, Christ Trump, and his son Donald Trump, who would have been 12. So Donald Trump is in a TV show that is back in time, taking place the day after Trackdown was released. So it's just this fascinating connection here. So how far back does the predictive programming go? Somebody mentioned, yeah, the Pentagon's construction, they broke ground on September 11th, 1941, which is 60 years before. The Pentagon, again, 77 feet high, hit by Flight 77 after its 77-minute flight. XG says, this is like, oh yeah, are you familiar with the 70s movie Videodrome? It's exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, David Cronenberg would have to be probably one of the meta-scripters here, but Videodrome, I'll have to go watch it again. Yeah, definitely on my list now. I watched it when it first came out. But that's exactly what happened. See, I think that a lot of these characters, like, okay, what's his name? John Carpenter. John Carpenter in They Live revealed how it works. John Carpenter in The Mouth of Madness revealed how it worked, where at the very end, the main character's in a movie theater watching his life on a movie screen, laughing and eating popcorn. And ironically, he's the only sane man in the world in an insane asylum going there for his own protection. But it's about how the world is in a simulation or an alternate reality mentally because they've all absorbed the same media. And in The Mouth of Madness, it was these horror books by Sutter Kane. But you could replace that with the Quran, the Holy Bible, or CNN. If everybody's locked into the same paradigm, the paradigm author controls their experience to a large degree. And this was a theme that came up with Mountainhead, where the character based on Elon Musk is like completely apathetic to the point. He doesn't care that his generative AI is causing chaos in the world. So Mountainhead comes out, and at that same time, you've got Los Angeles starts to burn. And then you have the No Kings protest, where thousands of protests are happening across the country. So this is, again, predictive, concurrent programming. What they're doing is, what is done, it's entrainment. So the entertainment propaganda and the news propaganda are being fed from the same source. It's as simple as that. No need to insert higher powers, no mystical explanations. Nobody here is confused. Well, maybe it's the simulation. No. This is media entrainment, and it doesn't just correspond entertainment and fake news, but it also corresponds to the drills that are happening. That like so for example, people like there's no way they could fake 9/11. How many people would be involved? Do you know how many terror drills the NRO was doing? How many live mass casualty actors were involved on 9/11 simulating the event when it coincidentally happened? Like this is standard operating procedure. Oh, that's right. Okay, I knew it was James Wood. So James Woods was in Videodrome, and James Woods, again, was a 9/11 witness. He's a total, what I'd consider to be a PSYOP actor. Definitely an insider, high security clearance, probably CIA. I mean, all these actors at some point lose their plausible deniability when they're involved in these ops. I think crisis acting is like a status thing. It's higher than being an A-lister. If you're a Hollywood actor and you get involved in driving a major PSYOP, you're top tier. I mean, who's the face of COVID-19? I didn't know anybody who got it. You didn't know anybody who got it. And then America's dad, Tom Hanks, catches it. It was like, oh, look, he's got COVID. Now we all know somebody who has it. Now it's personal. They use celebrities to attach you to events. Obrick says, I had that book from the 1890s with Barron Trump. Okay, so another good example of this process. I mean, so we're talking about predictive programming. So a lot of it is in architecture. Like the Twin Towers were built to be taken down. They break ground, start building it in like 68. 33 years later, they pull it down. 13 years later, on 11/3, they open the One World Tower. These are all highly significant pieces in this bigger program, but I would say predictive programming is as old as media, because when Kennedy was shot, they said, oh, Lee Harvey Oswald watched those two films with Frank Sinatra, The Manchurian Candidate, and what was the other one? There were two Frank Sinatra films that had the theme of the assassin. And then on the day of his assassination, the news commentators are talking about past assassinations and holes in security that allowed it to happen. So as long as we've had media, it's been used for this. That's the thing. News media wasn't at one point legitimate and it was co-opted and now it's used to drive government narratives. No, the media itself has always just been a replacement for church. It's been a worldview unifier. It is the one world religion. And they've always had this much of a monopoly. But it's a very good question. So again, the earliest examples in movies, 1958, even before that. But yeah, okay, you could consider all science fiction books to be predictive programming. Think about it. You know, Isaac Asimov, and by the way, the original Space Odyssey 2001, in the book form, they're going to Saturn, which makes a lot more sense with the black monolith, which you have in the palm of your hands if you're on a smartphone. The black monolith is the ubiquitous screen through which we get our worldview. This is the new Bible for the world. The black screen. The black mirror. Thank you very much, Frank Murr. I'm working on getting into a new headquarters, but I have a plan to get a second phone so that I can live stream similar to what I had done in the office. So I have a separate phone for audio and video clips. I want to remain totally mobile, even though I'm going to settle into a studio where I can be a little more productive. Last night, we started working on Newsbenders, the remake. We're remaking Newsbenders for 2025, updating it. And I'm using Google Gemini Ultra. And its voice sync is incredible. I'm actually using the original actors like Donald Pleasance. Interesting actor, Donald Pleasance. You know, he's the guy who played the president during World War III in Escape from New York. He played the Dr. Evil-like character with the inspiration for Dr. Evil, with the scar in his right eye. Named Donald, again, Donald, president, scar on the eye. But anyway, He's in Newsbenders, and the other actor was going to be the voice for Hell 9000. But we're remaking it using AI. I thought I was going to do it all last night, but after generating 50 clips, they said you've reached your limit. So they rate limit you, even if you're paying for the full version. I did a furniture moving gig yesterday to get the money to upgrade to Ultra. I upgrade to Ultra. We got a lot of work done, but it said you can't render any more videos until 9:15 p.m. tomorrow. So I decided instead of getting it done over the weekend, we're going to work on Newsbenders every night for the next 2 weeks. And by the end of the 2 weeks, it'll be complete. I'm turning this 28-minute play into a succinct 15-minute short film. So if you want to be a part of it, get into the Patreon or get into the Discord and just jump in voice at night. And I'm kind of just posting everything so you can see the process. As far as I can tell, Gemini AI is the best in terms of voice sync. I'm giving it the screenplay, paragraph by paragraph, with a basic prompt and pictures to work from. And it is having these characters spit out the lines. Easy. It is so easy. So my guess is they rate limited it for some reason. You know, I don't like that, but we have to deal with it. If they had told me they were going to limit me to 50 outputs a day, I might not have taken this route, but now that we have, I'm fine with it. Because if we now drag the project out over 2 weeks, it'll just be better. J5 says, hey, Tim, I looked into your terrible rapper, saw something last night. She might want to look into it. Literally had your name on it. Yeah, what exactly are you referring to? I'm interested. If you could clarify on that comment. I looked into your terrible rapper. Oh, the trading cards. Yes. Okay, yes. Yeah, so what we are going to do is the PSYOP trading cards are going to be in there. Number 25 to 36 will be out next, the third set. I'm actually getting the playing card wrappers to put them in. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start randomizing the sets. So it'll be like Pokemon. We'll have conspiracy theorists lining up and fighting to be the first ones to get the latest shipment. Have you seen these adults fighting over Pokemon cards? By the way, Pokemon's fake. Just because you see him on your app doesn't mean he's real. A lot of people are like, well, I've never seen the ISS, but there's an app. Sorry. Just because it's on an app doesn't make it real. It would be cool if it did. All right, well, I think I'm pushing it now. We're almost at an hour. I don't want the phone to overheat. So just a heads up here. I'll be live later after 3 p.m. my time. I'll get my phone open so we can get Jurassic Liars on and discuss what's going on. Today should be interesting. Again, it's Obama's birthday. Hakeem Jeffries' birthday. Was he first Democrat, first black Speaker of the House? And I was like, that's interesting. These both of them historically notable figures, same birth date. And I was trying to figure out, have I ever seen Hakeem Jeffries and Obama in the same place? So I was open to the idea that this was one of these mask situations. I had to dig for a long time. Somebody managed to find it for me. I was really starting to question it. So the link to the Discord, let's see how you can get there. Off the top of my head. Okay, you know what I'll do? I'm going to post it in the comment, the posting section on this page. So just look at your notifications, and I'll post a notification after this live stream with a link to the Discord. So if any of you want to participate in the Newsbenders production, because Newsbenders is a classic. It's about this group. It's about the news media writing the news 5 years in advance. That's what it's about. And it's about somebody being led into it. And when he's led into it, it's kind of ominous. Because he's like, oh yeah, well, we've been monitoring you through an implant. if you talk about this, you're going to die. So it's like an offer he couldn't refuse. He was being led into the Central World News Services. But for our purposes, I've renamed it the Global PSYOP Entertainment Complex, GPEC. So again, we're doing an updated version of this classic play using generative AI. Based on what we've rendered so far, in my opinion, I think it's going to be watchable. It's not going to be AI slop. It's going to be watchable. It's going to, I think, make our points for us. Because what we're trying to do here is demonstrate that there's a reason for conspiracy theories, and it's not because they're true. There's a reason why we have this contrived dialectic, and the ultimate purpose of unchecked, unmitigated, uncorrected fake news is our history is being faked. And all you got to do is extrapolate from that. Well, what does that mean? If they've warped our history for the last 50 years that we can tell, 60 years, 70 years, and if they're doing it into the future, what does that really mean? Well, here's what it means. It means that, as Orwell wrote, those who control the past control the present. We're looking at a worldview monopoly, history being manufactured for the purposes of maintaining a global worldview that's synchronized according to one specific set of special interests, like a Bible, like a religion. But this is not even debatable at this point. Unless you're willing to deny the influence of influence operations, propaganda, and psyops in the last 50 years. It's like, well, no, obviously these things set the narrative template for everything that follows. And we're not just looking at the fake events. We're looking at the directors, the writers, the actors, the celebrities who hype these things up. And we're ascertaining what level of plausible deniability various people have with regard to their involvement with the big conspiracy. The only true conspiracy, which is an ongoing and successful one. I call it the meta script. HG says, will you air it on YouTube? Yes, when Newsbenders is done, we're going to release it on YouTube as a premiere. I mean, the whole purpose of it is to explain certain ideas through the medium of entertainment, like short film. I think that, and once this is done, I think we'll have enough practice. We have other ideas. I have this concept for a sitcom that takes place behind the scenes of these fake events, like from Stanley Kubrick's perspective, for example. But we'll get into that later. The AI is going to get better, so we might as well get in on it now and get good at it, because our output's just going to become more efficient as time goes on. I've always pushed back against AI phobia because I knew that, this is a leveler of the playing field, but you have to get in early. There are people kicking themselves because they didn't invest in crypto early on, because then after that it's pointless. And if you're not investing your time and energy into figuring out what AI is going to be doing in your particular area of life, you're going to be playing catch up later. It's inexorable. It's not going to stop. It's incontestable. It's a takeover. And it's not a bad thing. I think that our net intelligence is going to go up. But the one thing we have to keep in mind, though, is that AI, all these different models, they're all operating from the presumption that mainstream media is real, that the history is real. And why does fake history matter? Well, I make such a big deal about it because whether or not you watch the news, it's immaterial. History forms our collective shared backdrop, our consensus reality, because we all have our places where we're all not, we all live in different geographical locations, but we all have a shared experience that we draw from. We all agree that yesterday happened and it was Saturday. We all agree that Trump is president and that man may or may not have landed on the moon, and there's debate about it. So we all come from the same background, the same backstory. And if that backstory is false, bent, manipulated, then it matters, because the people living within it are manipulated. If you want to understand this on a microcosm, just think about a cult. People living in a bunker. So you've been living in a bunker for the last 20 years, and all of your input has come from the preacher who tells you that the world's been destroyed and that you must ration everything and live this way, and maybe you'll go to the surface in the future. So if you have a captive audience and a closed informational system, I mean, think of Truman in a Truman Show. Well, we are collectively in a Truman Show. And one of the things that pushed us into the Truman Show, I think, are the weapons of mass destruction, in particular, like the nuke. That reset everything on the world stage because all the governments are participating in fake space and fake weapons of mass destruction. And these are major plot devices. So if you just look at the nuke as a plot device, a pandemic as a plot device, these are all plot devices. And they keep us all in the same story. You know, like, oh, it's his story. Yeah, well, his story, Big Brother's story, is the metascript. So yeah, the significance of fake news is more than just political bias, winning an election, influencing target demos, or No. The purpose of fake news is this is how they quite literally put us into a simulation. Or rather, your internal representation of the world, your internal simulation is warped to their paradigm. And the map is not the territory, but most people don't notice because the parts where they don't match up, they fill in the gaps with what they show you on TV. So I don't live in the world of space junk and school shooters and terror attacks. These things aren't part of my life, but if I watch the news, they are. But I watch the news now without the assumption it's all real, and I have a different take. I knew a lot of people had a hard time dealing with the stress of World War III a few months ago when Iran was going to nuke the world or something. And they were worried about getting nuked. I know people. And of course, many of them have lived their entire lives in the false paradigm. So yeah, the screens are the simulation. And the reason I push back against simulation theory is that, okay, so the news is fake. We get that. It doesn't mean reality's fake. It means we're being lied to. It means the TV is a liar. But the truthers have been fed a steady diet of simulationism where if something doesn't make sense, it's because you're in a simulation. You're in a video game. And what that does is it takes them out of objectivity. So they think, oh, news fake equals reality's fake. Oh, there's some weird things about this Luigi story. We must be in a video game. No, that's not the correct conclusion. The weird things that you're seeing show that it's not an organic event. They're forcing puzzle pieces in. The machine lie says they've been rewriting history since writing and symbols were able to be transmitted to large groups. Yeah, when I say TV, I mean, I haven't even seen, the only TVs I see are in older movies. Like, no, when I say TV, I'm just meaning the broadcast, the uniform broadcast. Like, because people used to say, I don't watch TV, as though it insulates them from the programming, which it doesn't. You have categories of people. You've got the masses who are misinformed. They are the programmed. The people who don't pay attention are uninformed. And then you have the informed, which is us. The uninformed don't know what's going on. And when something big happens, they just have to assume it's real because they don't have the cognitive tools to separate real from fake because they haven't become informed disbelievers. So yeah, TV is an antiquated term. That's why I say monolith of the screen, because I'm talking about media as a monolith because there's no separation between entertainment and news. There's no meaningful distinction is what I should say.